here, Optical Jedi Rick, and today we're going to talk a little bit about progressive lenses. Believe it or not, there are thousands of solutions for progressive lenses. Some designs that have existed for 50 years, some designs that have only been around for a few months. And it can be a very complicating and overwhelming environment for the consumer to try to navigate, but it also can be a really complicated environment for the optician to navigate if they have not been properly trained in what's available and what differentiates the different lenses in terms of what they're trying to do for the patient. I'm hoping in this very brief video that I can discuss a little bit about what can be for a patient so you can help find those answers, whether you are the patient or you are the optician trying to assist them. I like to describe to my patients the difference this way. Talking about progressives is like talking about cars. There are many manufacturers, and each manufacturer has many models. All will get you from A to B. They're all going to drive you from one place to the other. They all have four wheels and a seat and a steering wheel. But how comfortable is that experience? How luxurious is that experience? How natural is that experience? That's what changes. Does the car fit you? Does it feel good? Does the lens fit you and feel good? And that's what we're here to do to try to help the patient. Some people want a 4x4. They want something rugged and outdoorsy. Some people want a luxury car that's going to get them from one place to the other, just bathed in comfort. And those are very different experiences. And the same goes for the progressive lens environment. Some lenses are really meant to try to be very utilitarian and just get you from distance vision to near and not worry about anything else. Others are trying to get you from distance to near in a very comfortable and relaxed method with soft edges so you don't feel blur as much. Trade-off, of course, is that means that there is this larger section of lens where it's slowly fading from crisp to blurry. That means that it may not be the best fit for somebody that needs real precision. Now, to back up, for the patients out there, and maybe for some of the opticians as well, talking about progressive designs, there's a couple different ways you can break down those categories. One is talking about how does this lens work. So a typical progressive is building a glass design. You have this very wide distance zone tapering to a slightly smaller intermediate zone. Think arm's length, think your computer screen, think the dashboard in your car, going to a slightly larger reading area. That's the general default design concept for progressive. But there are a whole bunch of other ways they can work too. Some designs can be a funnel, giving you very wide distance, tapering to a slightly smaller intermediate, going to even smaller still reading. That design typically is going to be meant for somebody that doesn't need a whole lot of up close work, but does need a very wide, comfortable zone for mid-range, working on multiple monitors. Somebody that's spending a lot of time driving, they need that width in the intermediate. On top of that, we can go into the concept discussion of analog versus digital. Now, digital is a word that's thrown a lot around in our modern world. There are so many different approaches to what digital means. Obviously, in the essence of it, we're talking about something that is made with a digital process. It's either on or off, a 0 or a 1. But what does that mean in practical terms in experience for a patient? In an analog progressive design, what you're going to end up with is something that has been literally ground by a big cutting tool into a block of plastic or glass. Now, when we go that route, that tends to generate a lot more distortion in the peripheral vision. In particular, what we're talking about here is unwanted astigmatism correction, something that is not part of your prescription, but is going to be existing in that lens because of the way it was created. Now, in practical terms, for the experience of wearing it, what that means is that when you move your head from side to side, you can feel the world rocking and rolling like you're on the ocean. It can be really nauseating for somebody that has motion sickness issues. And it has other drawbacks as well in terms of how large those reading zones might be. The advantage is because it's a very antiquated technology, it's also a very inexpensive technology. And typically your less expensive progressives are going to be built on that backbone. When we get into more modern digital designs, what they're using is lasers to cut that lens rather than a literal blade to cut that lens. And when we use lasers, that means that we can align that unwanted astigmatism. Now, it's still going to exist there, but we can make sure that all of the angles of that astigmatism correction align in a more natural and comfortable way. So you will notice some blur, but you won't necessarily notice a swim. You won't feel things rocking and rolling as you move your head around. Now, as you've probably heard me discuss, certainly if you're following me on any of my other channels, I personally have worn about 120 or so progressive designs since I started wearing progressives roughly 13, 14 years ago. Now that is a very small subsection of the thousands that are available. However, I have been intentionally testing categories of lenses. So I may not know the specifics of every design. I may not have worn every design. I have tested how those different categories feel when you move from one zone to the other. That helps my patients because I have a catalog in my head of what can be, but it also can help all of you to make sure that you're getting into something that feels really comfortable and natural for yourself as a patient or as an optician, so you can test the lenses yourself. Also, if you're the optician, to help you find the right solution for a patient. And that is really the most critical thing. You got to listen to your patients and hear what they need. I am going to call out a few specific brands that I really believe in. Want to be very clear that I have received no payment. I am not sponsored in any way by any of these brands or manufacturers. These are just lenses that I personally have tested and have enjoyed. And there are several different manufacturers that I have found high quality lenses from. Whether or not those are the right lenses for you may vary, again, depending a little bit on your prescription. Every progressive design, well, not every progressive design, but most progressive designs are well suited to specific prescription types. So what I'm saying is somebody that is nearsighted with a reading correction may find one set of lenses really comfortable, but somebody that is farsighted with a reading correction may find that that same lens is incredibly uncomfortable and they prefer something else entirely that nearsighted patient can't stand. And what that comes down to is, again, how these walls on that channel feel. Do you feel like you're in a canyon? Do you feel like you've got soft rolling hills drifting away to your peripheral distortions? And that really will feel quite different depending on if you're dealing with a plus powered lens or a minus powered lens. That's why I often test myself, who is nearsighted, with a coworker who is not nearsighted, so we can see if we're having similar experiences, and we'll try to find those lenses that are the most versatile for both prescription categories. Specifically, when we come to manufacturers and lenses that I have found that I like quite a bit, I have found that there are several Varilux lenses that I find incredibly comfortable. I found quite a few Zeiss lenses that I find incredibly comfortable. Quite a few Nikon lenses, which is admittedly not a category that is easy to find in America, but is very dominant in other parts of the world. And there are quite a few of those that I like quite a bit. And there are a few other kind of unique niche lenses that maybe aren't for everyone for other reasons. Maui Jim makes some exceptional progressive lens designs, but they only can go into Maui Jim frames. So that's kind of another category that we'll get to on another episode. NeuroLens is another really unique product that is available into any manufacturer, but you have to have special tools in the practice in order to be able to measure for that lens. It is an incredible product that is specifically designed to address pain issues associated with our trigeminal nerve, which shares a channel with all the muscles that control our eyes. And I am a big believer in NeuroLens. I wear more than one variation of that technology myself, and I swear with my hand up that I have found that lens completely eliminated neck pain that I'd suffered from for 10 years. It's an incredible product, but it doesn't work with all insurances, and it becomes a little bit more of a price issue for some people. If we're ignoring price for a moment, it's an incredible product, and I highly recommend it. If you were to press me and ask me about specific lens designs and not just manufacturers that I like, of my 120 or so lenses that I've tried, there's definitely a subset of probably, I'd say 10 that are at the top of that list that I find so comfortable and so natural that I can honestly sometimes forget that I'm wearing a progressive. So when we get to those 120 lenses and there's the top 10 or so that I really like a lot, honestly, on any given day, sometimes my first choice will switch because they all have things that they do a little bit better. Some are a little more natural for distance vision. Some are a little more natural for intermediate distance. Some are a little more natural for near distance. And so what I prefer on any given day can change. But I will say that I love the Varilux X design. I love the Nikon Prezio power. I love the Neuralens. I love the Maui Jim high contrast lens, and their blue light protect lens, which is also exceptional. And quite frankly, their sunglass progressive, which is a little different, is one of the most comfortable progressives I've ever worn. Incredibly natural. But there are also a few others that I absolutely love. And you know, it just again comes down to a little bit about situation, but probably the most versatile, most comfortable that I'm enjoying at the moment, I probably break it down to a couple of specific choices. I recently had the opportunity to try out the Zeiss Smart Life Individual Intermediate lens. And that is a lens that is giving a wider intermediate zone. It's more of a funnel shape rather than the hourglass. And I find that lens incredibly comfortable. Now, admittedly, the reading area is quite a bit smaller on that lens, so it's not necessarily my first choice if I'm going to be doing a lot of heavy near work. But for everything else, I find it incredibly comfortable. Now, if I'm looking to need that stronger, wider near zone, I'm probably breaking towards either the X design, depends a little bit on frame fit, and also the Nikon Prezio power, which I'm wearing at this very moment, and I really love. Now, I mentioned that the X design has some frame limitations. Specifically, it's a combination of frame with prescription. Can cause some issues with that lens. And it's not a be-all, end-all. There are ways for a really skilled optician to get around some of those issues. But specifically, because it is a variable corridor length design, and we'll get back into that detail in just a moment, that means that the readings sometimes can be a little low if the frame is particularly tall. And that can cause some problems finding that near zone and that intermediate zone. But it tends to make that distance even more comfortable. And I found that that issue can be most pronounced when you have a reading correction that's over a +2. Now, it's, again, not a full hard stop. This is the situation. Anything over a 2 is not a good choice for an X at all. But it's something to start to get concerned about how high is your seg height if you go over a 2, in my experience. I mentioned something about variable corridor length. So there's a way that you can subcategorize progressives, either variable or fixed corridor length. How far does it go from distance vision to near vision? How much time does it take to get that from full power distance to full power near? In a fixed corridor length, it is a very specific millimeter distance that you're going to go to straight full near. So you have control of a precise position of where that reading is going to fall. In a variable corridor lens, an algorithm at the lab decides where to put that, and it's all based on how tall is that lens, how tall is that seg height. And again, a segment height is your pupil to bottom of frame. So in certain circumstances, if that frame is particularly tall or the eyes are right at the very top of the lens, a variable corridor design can be a little problematic because that reading is so far down you can't find it. But it's not always the case. As with everything, there's an exception to every rule. And I'm hoping that my guides here can help you find ways to navigate some of those confusions. I'm going to put up a list right here that will show you some of the lenses I've worn and kind of a generalized ranking to give you some idea of how they can categorize. And admittedly, there are some lenses on that list that aren't even manufactured anymore, and for good reason. Technology's improved, and we got to stay on that cusp of that wave if we want to be helping our patients the best way possible. Once again, I want to thank you all for watching my video. Please, if you enjoyed the content here, if you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe. It's going to make my job easier. It's going to make your job easier finding my content. And until next time, this is the Optical Jedi Rick here saying, I'll be seeing you.